Opening the door to overseas superstores, India's minority government is put to the test in the argument over big players joining the local market. Either the welfare of millions of small shop owners and farmers is on the line, or it's a chance to stimulate a flagging economy. India and the world's retail giants. This is Inside Story. Hello everyone, I'm Kamal Santamaria. We're looking at a contentious issue today that's caused uproar in the Indian Parliament and right across the country's business sector. The technical term for it is foreign direct investment, FDI. You're going to hear this a lot. It basically amounts to allowing the likes of, let's say, Walmart, Tesco, Carrefour, some of the world's biggest retailers, into what is a highly protected Indian marketplace. Now, it was debated in the Indian Parliament on Wednesday, a feisty debate at times too. But the government, which supports FDI, did win the vote. A timely boost, perhaps, with India's economy facing its worst year in a decade. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's looking for ways to turn things around. And letting in global megastores is part of his flagship reforms program, arguing it'll cut waste and bring down costs. Opponents, though, say it will crush farmers and small shop owners. And they're the people we're going to start with before debating the issue with our guests, the small business people of India, in this report for Inside Story from Divya Gopalan in New Delhi.
Little has changed at this furniture market in Delhi since it was set up more than 60 years ago. But now its future has become a symbolic argument in Parliament's debate on whether to allow multi-brand foreign retail companies into the country.
I think we don't have to change our way of furniture, way of business, which we do actually, and people are liking these kind of furniture.
When I asked him whether he would be able to contend with the likes of IKEA and other retail giants poised to come in, ever the salesman, he is confident that he can make better products at a cheaper price. But not everyone shares his optimism.
We believe that going by the experiences of the other parts in the world, there had been adverse impact on the local employment, on the existing employment in the small retail businesses. India can hardly afford to lose livelihood in retail sector, given the fact that agriculture is almost stagnant and there is no growth of jobs in manufacturing sectors. So this will be disastrous for livelihood.
Retail is the country's second largest source of employment. It has more than 40 million workers. India's economic reform program to let foreign chains such as Walmart set up shops has divided Parliament and remains a contentious issue. The Indian government started opening up the economy in the 1990s, but since then economic reform has often been stalled by fierce opposition in Parliament, which is why India lags well behind China and many Southeast Asian countries when it comes to foreign investment. India is also lagging behind in growth. Asia's third largest economy looks set for its worst performance in 10 years, and investors are pushing the government for deeper reforms.
No, it would be really nice working in a competition environment. It would affect us in a positive way. We would do our job properly, and then we can always increase our business because there's a lot of competitive environment.
So it seems with India's growth at stake, opening its market to foreign investors could be a positive step. But the opposition and others worry that having big chains like Walmart could hurt local businesses in the long run. Divya Gopalan for Inside Story in New Delhi.
So, the focus of today's discussion, balancing India's economic reforms. And taking part in this debate on Inside Story today from New Delhi, Dharmendra Kumar, who you saw in that report, he's the director of the India Foreign Direct Investment Watch. Here in Doha is Rajesh Menon. He is an advisory partner at the financial house KPMG Qatar. And via Skype from New York, Arvind Panagariya. He is a professor of Indian political economy at Columbia University. So thank you to all three of you for joining us. Let me start with Dharmendra Kumar in New Delhi. Now, I know that you are broadly against the idea of FDI, so let me play devil's advocate then and say that surely this is part of natural capitalist evolution. countries all over the world allow in foreign companies. I do my shopping at Carrefour here in Doha, and Carrefour may come to India now. It's actually a fairly normal thing and was bound to happen at some point.
For India, things are very different, and 97% of the Indian retail sector is still driven by people and not by corporations. So the 40 million people, drive the Indian retail industry, the Indian retail sector on their own labor with small capitals, with low entry barriers. Changing this overnight without sufficient regulations and safeguards could have disastrous impact on the livelihood of these poorest of the poor people of India.
So you
and
honestly...
that is why the livelihood perspective is driving the major concerns, and from today's vote in the parliament, it has become clear that this still does not have the majority going in favor of superstores.
So you honestly believe then that these big companies would want to come into India and then just ride roughshod over everyone, not the idea, and again I'm playing devil's advocate here, that they would come here or come to India to provide a new service, to open up the market, to bring new things into the market, expose people to new things?
There is nothing new which they will bring in. What they will bring in is the new model, the model which is unsustainable in the long run, the model which would be taxing for the ecology, the model which is already having a very heavy putting some kind of heavy pressure on the local economy as well as the local ecology. So what they are bringing in is the outdated model which West is already rejecting.
Okay, let me put that to Rajesh Menon there. Dharmendra's basically said they will bring nothing new, these companies. Your view?
I think on the Indian retail market is actually poised for big growth. And I think it's important, it's a great opportunity for the country to actually showcase to the global world what it can offer. And I think it's important that we actually make a separation between the two markets within the retail, and it's the organized and the unorganized market. Actually, we're talking about the organized market when we talk about the likes of Walmart and the Tesco's and the Carrefour. We're talking about the organized market, and that actually accounts for close to around 6 to 7% of the total retail market. In essence, India's retail market is approximately around $400 billion US dollar market, and we're talking about a small portion of $28 billion market for the retail. And the studies actually suggest that this market is actually bound to grow. The total retail market is likely to grow to around 1.2 trillion US dollar market by 2020, and the retail market in terms of percentage contribution will actually triple over the next 10 years. So I think if you really want that to happen, there's absolutely no other choice but to actually modernize our organized sector, because today the entire retail market, when you talk about unorganized market, you're talking about shopkeepers and the hawkers and the kiranas in India, which actually do the 92%. But today the consumerism in India is changing. You're talking only about the retailers, but also have a spare thought for the consumers. Indian consumers are becoming more global. They're looking to buy, they want to get the best of what the global has got to offer.
Okay, I'll stop you there because I do want to come on to the consumers a little bit later, but let's bring in Arvind Panagariya from New York as well. I think Rajesh has made a really good point here. Organised market versus unorganised market. Do you think there is enough of a split between the two for the introduction of a big retailer not to affect it so much?
Look, I totally agree with Rajesh that the sector as a whole is going to grow. And even if the shares shift a bit, which I feel they should, it is not going to mean that the shopkeepers are about to disappear or even shrink. The entire sector is going to grow. So that's one point. The second point, we ought to have a little bit of historical perspective here. That when India started liberalizing the industry and services in 1991, these were the same criticisms were made that local industry will be decimated, we will not be able to compete. Why do we want to open to the foreigners? Let's first compete among ourselves. But All said and done, 20 years later, I don't see that Indian industry has been decimated. Quite the contrary, it is much stronger today. It has restructured itself. And do we not want to do that restructuring in retail trade also? I mean, in the end, if India, at least as a citizen of India, I would like India to be a modern country. And ultimately, the opening to the retail sector today is a part of that modernization. It is not like, suddenly retail sector is going to be populated by these massive foreign retail chains. It is going to be a slow process. There are enough safeguards built into the legislation itself, actually, which will slow down the movement of the retailers. And foreign retailers, actually domestic retailers have been in the market since 2005 already anyway. So it is really, they are the ones who should feel much greater threat rather than the local shopkeepers who actually provide the kinds of services that most Indian consumers will continue to consume, most Indian consumers.
Okay, let's put sorry, let me interrupt you, and I want to put this back to Dharmendra because both Rajesh and Arvind have given, the other side of the argument here. And this idea of unorganised versus organised market, that there might be enough of a split. Let me give you a really sort of a crude example here and say something like cricket, which we know is a national obsession in India. Are you going to buy a cricket bat and cricket pads from Tesco? Or are you going to go to the man down the street who's been making them for 20, 30 years and knows the market and knows the customers and knows what to do? Surely there is enough of a split there.
This will be wrong to term the Indian retailers as unorganized. I think they are self-organized and they are well organized. And this is more a question of how to organize the retail business, where this will be organized by big giant corporations like Walmart, or will be organized by the cooperatives of the people. We have the largest cooperative of the world, Amul, which pays almost 70% to its producers, which is parallel. So it's also a question of paying better prices to the producer and providing more choices to the consumers and having a real competition in the market, which Indian retailers do have. You have a very tough, intense competition going on in each and every market. And then we already allow superstores in wholesale, in single brand, in cash and carry, in cold storages, in warehouses, logistics. So no one bars foreign direct investments in all those sectors which could provide them new goods or more goods.
Nicely put as well. Self-organised perhaps rather than unorganised. Gentlemen, I want to move on and really widen this out, talk more widely about the Indian economy and the other efforts that are going on to try to fire it up. India, the ninth largest economy in the world, but as we mentioned earlier, it is suffering. Manufacturing is contracting, exports are falling. I'm just going to take our views through some of the numbers. Growth slowing as well. It hit a 9-year low in the year to March. It was down to 6.5%. It was up at 8.5% for the previous 2 years, though that is still very good, it has to be said. Inflation, that did ease to 7.45% in October, but that was after it hit a 10-month high of 7.81% in September. And figures for October show the country recorded its worst ever trade deficit, soared to almost $21 billion. So that economic picture is not good, but I think we need a bit more information about the Indian workforce, which we have sort of discussed already, to understand why this issue has become so big. India, the world's second largest labour force, numbering almost 500 million people. Only China is ahead of it. More than half work in agriculture, then followed by, which we've been discussing, the retail sector, which employs just over 7% of the workforce. So they're out there working for sure. Poverty, though, remains a concern, and Dharmendra talked about this earlier. Figures from 2010 showed 29% of people in towns and cities live on less than $1.25 a day. In rural areas, it's 34%. And last year, a World Bank report said attempts by the Indian government to combat poverty were not working. So let's go back to this idea about the workforce, first of all, where they're working, what they're doing. And I think those numbers lend themselves to both arguments, actually. You could say this is a workforce that could be threatened by FDI, or you could say that it's a huge opportunity. Rajesh, in Doha, your thoughts on that? Isn't this possibly a huge employment opportunity?
I think my perspective is this would actually give a lot of opportunity for employment, because one of the prerequisites for actually having anyone of the likes of Walmart is to actually invest into the supply chain, into infrastructure and logistics. So it's not just the retail store itself, but the back end of the retail store is a great opportunity for them to actually employ. It will boost the employment in the back end of it, and I think from every perspective you look at it, it's a great opportunity. And also, if you just look at the research that it suggests, if the retail market does, the organized, if you want, for the sake of bringing it again, if it doesn't grow to that extent, actually the likely loss of employment is approximately in the region of 1 million, because if you're organized sector, if you don't modernize your retail sector, you're actually bound to actually grow less by 30%, as a result of which you're bound to face employment, loss of employment by approximately 1 million people. Having said that, I would also say that if you don't have a good regulatory framework surrounding this, you're bound to face some dislocation of labor. And I think you got to necessarily have certain safeguards to make sure that the likes of Walmart or the Carrefour don't actually push the wages down. It's not actually a question of loss of employment. It's actually about the wages or the level of wages these companies would be afford to pay or will be willing to pay to manage their margins very well. So it's about what is it that the Indian employee, an average Indian employee who's going to work in the retail sector, will he be better off or will he be worse off with this particular regime? If there are necessary safeguards, which I'm sure is being put in place, we believe I think it will be a great opportunity for Indian employees to actually benefit in the retail sector.
Good points you've raised about regulatory frameworks and safeguards. So let's put some of that to some of our other guests. Let's ask Arvind Panagariya in New York what you think about that. Do you see enough focus on the regulation of this FDI and of any of these reforms to make sure that that person who is looking for a job or who has a job, or even those people who are struggling on the $1.25 a day, that they will be looked after here and that there will be a positive effect on them?
Look, Rajesh raised the issue of wages. I think, multinationals typically pay significantly higher wages. It is not an accident that, job seekers actually line up at the multinationals to get jobs. So I'm not worried about them not paying better wages. Surely regulatory system has to be in place because, large chains can misbehave, but I'm not hugely concerned over that. And as I said, wages is to me, they will actually help raise the average wages in India in the retail sector. So that also is a positive. I only see that, this is going to be a slow process. It is not like suddenly a huge number of jobs will be created or there will be a big kind of jump in the average level of wages. It will be a slow process. And each side seems to be overstating actually the impact in the short run.
Gentlemen, let's widen this out even further, shall we? Because as well as opening up the retail sector, India's Prime Minister wants to push through a raft of other reforms. He's trying to create opportunities that would make India perhaps more attractive to foreign investors. I want to run through those for our viewers here. They include raising the cap on foreign investment in the insurance sector from 26% up to 49%. Also talk of allowing more overseas presence in pension funds. Making the acquisition of land easier to allow overseas companies, for example, to buy up farmland, which you could build a factory on there. And also granting licenses to new private banks. Dharmendra Kumar in New Delhi, let me ask you, do you think these other reforms, well actually not do you think, explain to us, explain to our viewers, are these other reforms drawing as much criticism, as much debate? Are they seen in a positive light?
Look, India welcomes foreign direct investment in almost all sectors. There are only a few sectors in which it is not allowed. Retail is one of them, defense is one of them. It has allowed FDI in aviation some time back. And now there is a bill pending before the parliament to raise the cap in banking and insurance and pension. So there are certain criticism against increasing the cap of FDI in pension as well as the banking sector. And those criticisms are yet to be addressed. And we do think that unless those apprehensions are addressed adequately, it will not be wise for India to open up the pension sector to FDI or increase the cap in insurance, because the experiences that we have of private insurers are not so good, or even the private banking system has not been very inclusive for the poor people or for the rural people. So what they claim when they come to India, that we will have a more inclusive approach towards poor and towards villagers, that has not been the case. So this needs to be made sure that how to address the real genuine concerns of financial inclusion.
Forgive me, Dharmendra, but you sound extremely cautious, and I want to get an idea of where your caution comes from. Are you more worried about the foreign investment itself, or about the government's ability to implement it and regulate and all that? Where is your most fear coming from?
No, India is witnessing a lot of, I will say, litigations and threat of litigations against the state by many corporations in various sectors, including telecom and mining. And so inviting foreign direct investments with that kind of power and right which can challenge the state itself and which reduces the policy space of the state will be dangerous for any sovereign country. So India needs to make sure that investors come here on their terms, on the terms of the people of India.
Okay.
So that has to be made sure.
Okay, gentlemen, we're starting to run down the clock a bit. I want to get a few more thoughts from Rajesh and Arvind. Rajesh, I'll start with you. We have focused all of this discussion on what's coming into India. Let me flip it around and talk about India's own internal economy. I mean, a country of 1.2 billion people, huge workforce, huge amount of consumers, huge amount of infrastructure which could be put together. Don't you feel that India should be able to fire up its own economy from within to some degree?
I think over years, India have done that. India have grown tremendously over the last decade or so, and thanks to the growth internally that we have had in terms of the consumerism that we have had, the investments into the infrastructure, growing the country, which has actually grown the country, but also thanks to the services sector, which has taken off and also made it very global with the likes of TCS and others who have actually made India more global in terms of being the multinational organization that have gone out of India and actually established presence. So I think if you look at it, it is if you want India to be seen as a global citizen, where India's multinational organizations have to find feet outside, I think it's important that India also show that reciprocal measure, which is to actually open up the economy to some of the sectors. It's not a question of whether India can do it on its own or not, but I think it is being part of the WTO. It is being part of a global system. It's part of the global ecosystem that you cannot today ignore the needs of, or you cannot actually close doors and expect somebody else to open doors. So I think it's also about the consumer needs as people in India are looking to be more global. They would like this purchasing power. They're looking for global goods. So I think similarly, as India is becoming truly global in terms of wanting to create global organization, I think it is important India also open up to others, others from outside, which we have done over time.
Okay, Rajesh, a minute left. Arvind Panagariya in New York, final word to you. And let's pick up on what Rajesh said there. Internal or external, what's the most important thing for India?
Look, didn't we try this for 40 years till 1991? Internal is all that had a play in the whole game. The external actually started barely in 1991. So that strategy has been tried. Let me take your cricket analogy. You could argue that shall we produce good cricket player by first playing in Ranji Trophy or the county cricket or just the college cricket? Or should we go global and play the test cricket? I mean, how many Virat Kohlis and Sachin Tendulkars could we have produced without playing the test cricket? So, in the end, if you compete against the best in the world, you produce your own talents and harness your own talents a lot better. I mean, I am a professor here at Columbia. I have to actually compete against the best scholars in the global economy, and you can see the difference that it makes. If I had actually stayed and Rajasthan University, where I came from, I'd be languishing there as an assistant professor or associate professor today without having, done the research work I've done through.
Arvind,
So
you've started talking about cricket, and frankly, I could talk for another half hour about that, so I'm going to have to stop you there. But I do want to thank all of you, all our guests, for joining us on Inside Story. Dharmendra Kumar was in New Delhi, Rajesh Menon was here in Doha, and you saw Arvind Panagariya there in New York. Gentlemen, thank you. And to you, our viewers, we thank you as ever for joining us for Inside Story. Email us your thoughts, won't you? InsideStory@aljazeera.net is our address. I'm Kamal Santamaria. We'll see you again soon.